Our top story tonight is Kamala Harris's surge, Donald Trump's fear, and brand new developments fortifying the effort to make women's rights and choice a top ballot issue in some key states in November. I'm going to show you exactly how that's playing out in a moment, while the energy around the Harris campaign is manifesting itself in the big crowds, which are drawing Donald Trump's ire. One Detroit crowd was so large, so visually striking, that he is now lying about it with propaganda posts that I'm not going to quote or air tonight. Trump also is longing for the old days of 3 weeks ago. That's just some of her crowd lining up there, by the way, when Harris was not his opponent, drawing jokes about the matchup and Trump grieving the loss of whatever he viewed as an easier opponent.
I get it. You wanted to run against Joe Biden. Just two old dudes going toe-to-toe fungus. A last hurrah, Rocky 12. It's not fair. Now you've got to run against someone who appears healthy and youthful and happy.
He's grieving for his lost lead against Joe Biden. He's going through all the Trump stages of grief. It goes anger, denial that you're angry, hanger, and nugget bucket.
The jokes relate to something true. Colbert's just riffing on the old psychological literature about the actual 5 stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and finally acceptance, drawn from work by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross about 50 years ago. Now, many people can recognize how really bad news will spark things like denial or anger, and how a healthy landing place for major setbacks is usually an acceptance of reality, rather than staying in that denial phase, which could be your initial reaction or complete ongoing delusion. But Trump is weak when it comes to accepting tough realities. He lies constantly, that's documented. He lies most about truths that could hurt him politically, psychologically, or otherwise, and he is still lying about his 2020 loss, which linked to plots that have landed so many other people in prison, those lies with consequences. And in that sense, tonight we can tell you Donald Trump's lies can still be a tell. He doesn't lie about the election results he got in Texas, which he won twice. He lies about the things where he is losing or thinks he's losing or is on defense. And that, from the joke to the truth, tees up exactly how Trump and the Republican Party are falling further behind on reproductive rights and choice, which is now going to be on even more ballots this November. Now, remember, a huge majority of Americans say abortion should be a decision made by a woman and her doctor, not by the government. And that's especially the case earlier in a pregnancy when you break out these numbers. And that includes, as you see there, most Republicans. Or take Florida, where this DeSantis Republican abortion ban is now up for voters' review in this November's election through another ballot initiative. Most voters, according to the polls in Florida, oppose it, including Republicans. That's a reality that Donald Trump clearly knows about. So this week, he tried to falsely downplay this issue of reproductive rights as somehow fading. And then, on the question in Florida, a big state where he lives, he literally refused to say where he stands on the Florida vote.
I think the abortion issue has been very much tempered down, and I've answered, I think, very well in the debate, and it seems to be much less of an issue. I'm going to announce that. I'm going to actually have a press conference on that at some point in the near future, so I don't want to tell you now. But Florida does have a vote coming up.
Yes, Florida does have a vote coming up. That's what they asked him about, that state measure, which, as he said, he wouldn't answer, and then talked about, hyping a future press conference, which is a distraction technique. If you know what you stand for and are willing to stand on it, to stand on your positions in campaign business, you do it. He did not. But we know Trump's position. He put the 3 judges on the Supreme Court who overturned abortion rights. So now, trying to confuse people about his record or future announcements, I guess that's one political strategy on this issue. His party's current platform, which he's in charge of as the nominee, like Project 2025, though, already wrote down extreme anti-abortion plans. We have that. And that's even as Trump and his own aides still try to run from their own literally written out blueprints from the platform to Project 2025. This is a point that we pressed Trump White House veteran Stephen Miller on.
that Project 2025 has absolutely nothing to do with the past, present, or future. President Trump and President Trump alone will make his own policies.
There are issues where we see a kind of overlap. On abortion, a big issue. Project 2025 talks about cracking down on these abortion drugs. The current Republican platform talks about using the 14th Amendment to try to enshrine this sort of life test, as they call it, that would do similar things.
There will be no national abortion ban under a Trump administration.
That is the sound of one of Donald Trump's most loyal, long-serving, and quite conservative advisors running away from their record on reproductive rights. Now, it's up to voters to listen and decide what they believe. We are here gathering the evidence. But I am going to go through the evidence and the fact check, because it's the kind of claim you get from political people when they know a stance is unpopular. Trump and his new running mate already have the public and clear record opposing abortion access and going as far as calling for the criminal punishment of women for exercising what for many years had been a right. And by the way, many pro-life leaders oppose jailing women for this procedure, even if they separately don't think it should happen, precisely because it's so unpopular and, again, depending on the decade, unconstitutional.
Do you believe in punishment for abortion? Yes or no, as a principle?
The answer is that there has to be some form of punishment.
For the woman?
Yeah, there has to be some form.
I certainly would like abortion to be illegal nationally. Hopefully we get to a point where Ohio bans abortion and California and the Soroses of the world respect it.
I was able to terminate Roe v. Wade. I was so honored to have done it.
That's what he did. That was his position. And now he's basically trying to spin and swim away from that. But Donald Trump may be heading into a wave so big it overtakes anything he does. Even the best surfers find some waves are just too big to ride to take for a spin. And they are, as you'll see here, just overwhelmed. There it is. Just can't even ride it. Now, in real life, these waves are blue. Politically, it's more of a purple wave because states blue, purple, and red are all rejecting Donald Trump's abortion policy since Roe was ended. This is one of the largest bipartisan trends of our era. Trump faces this barrier-breaking nominee, a woman running on choice with this wind at her back. And the news tonight, just like those off-year elections where people voted for choice because it was on a state ballot, the news tonight is 2 more states will put abortion rights on their November ballots. This is big and follows the pattern. It includes the key swing state of Arizona and delegate-rich Missouri. Elections officials found that the activists pushing this qualified to get those issues on their ballot this November. So those states join Florida with the state initiative that Trump says he won't announce a position on yet, for 8 total states with these confirmed abortion rights initiatives on your ballot if you live in these states this November. This does not look like an issue that Trump can just swim away from or lie away into the background. In those 8 states, it will be staring at voters when they literally go into the voting booth and see that, among other issues, and candidate names. And in these next 8 weeks leading up to those election days in all those various states, or whether you vote early, sooner than 8 weeks, voters will be seeing an alternative candidate, a different choice, an option. And she's not spinning or lying about her stance or past record. There's been much talk about what we've heard from Kamala Harris in these 3 weeks since she became the nominee, and what press she's doing or not, and what events she's doing or not. But the record matters. I just showed you some of Trump and Vance's record. Now let's look at Harris's record. Before she was even the nominee, she had been on offense about reproductive rights.
So-called leaders are saying that after an individual has experienced such a crime of violence, a violation to their body, and surviving that these so-called leaders would say to that same person, and the next decision you make about your body is not yours either. That's immoral.
That is the moral position, and in her case, a consistent position on this major issue. Politics sometimes is about the crowds I mentioned. It's about the history. It's about all kinds of clashes, but sometimes it's about stuff that really matters to people's lives. You can watch Donald Trump's record there, and you can watch Harris's record, and you can see what you think they're saying, whether they seem to care, and what their consistency is. If you watch, of course, the ballot, which is the politics side, anyone who wants Democrats to win, even separate from this issue, thinks this is the wave, larger than many other waves, that could completely topple even a candidate who's been effective at spinning and lying his way through other waves.